Okay, in the last video I took you into Betaflight and I showed you how I personally set up both of these multirotors in Betaflight. Just remember, you don't have to do exactly what I do, that was just a guideline. In this video I'm going to show you how to set up the ESCs and your motors. And remember, I'm going to leave a link to my BL Heli Suite playlist in the description below, so if you do need any additional information, then there's plenty of videos in there that should help you out. The very first thing you want to do is download BL Heli Suite. And to do this, you can just go online, type in BL Heli. You'll come up with this website, blhelisuite.wordpress.com. Click here, and then download BL Heli Suite right here. And then once you unzip it and install it, you can make a desktop icon like I have right here, and then we'll go into it. Then you want to select Atmel-SI Labs interface, and you have one of two options. It's going to be either E or 6. It really doesn't matter which one you pick. You don't have to worry about getting the correct one, because if you do pick the wrong one, it will automatically detect that you have the wrong one selected and it will switch you to the one that you need. So you can just click on E, and if that is wrong, it's going to tell you. Now I'm going to do the Valorum build first, and then I'll come back to the Martian 2 build, but they're both going to be exactly the same. So let's take our USB cables, plug it in. For port, select the correct COM port, and for me it's this one. You may have a different COM number, that's perfectly fine and normal. Leave the baud rate at 115,200 and then click connect. Now we want to plug in a battery, and keep in mind, if you are using a video transmitter that starts transmitting as soon as you plug your battery in, then you have to have an antenna on it, otherwise you will burn up the video transmitter. Now the Cricket video transmitter, it does not start transmitting until I hold this button down, and that is why I don't need an antenna. After you plug the battery in, then click read setup. And you want to do it in this specific order, and what I mean is USB cable, then click connect, then plug in battery, then read setup. Because you can plug in the USB cable and battery first and then click connect and read setup, but sometimes you'll get an error. And sometimes you won't get an error, but whenever you try to flash anything to the ESCs, then something's going to become corrupt and you're going to run into problems. So I always do it in that specific order. If everything is up and running, then you will get this message here, and this is going to show you the version of firmware that the ESCs use. At least if you're using BL Heli S ESCs. If you have BL Heli ESCs, then it will actually have a version. It's going to look a little bit different, and this shows the version number that's currently on the ESCs. We are using the Multirotor firmware because there are other types, and this ESC number 1 is always the master, and then you have 3 slaves. So let's click OK. If you do that and one ESC or 2 ESCs are missing, then just try the whole process all over again. Sometimes it does take a couple tries. If you try it like 10 times and it's still not working for that one ESC, then it's probably a bad ESC or a bad pin coming from your flight controller. In that case, you would have to remap that pin on your flight controller, and I do have a video showing you how to do that in my Betaflight playlist. So now we see it's going to automatically detect how many ESCs you have connected. We have 4 ESCs going. Number 1 is blue because that is the master ESC, and then we have 3 green. And these colors are going to change as we make changes to these ESCs, and I'll explain those colors once we get there. The next thing we want to do before we make any setting changes is go ahead and update the version of firmware on the ESCs. So for these ESCs that I'm using, the ZTW 30 amps, well, let me back up. If you have BL Heli S ESCs, then your screen will look something like this. If you have BL Heli ESCs without the S, then your screen is you're going to have a few more options. And if you have BL Heli S ESCs, like I said, there is no such thing as multi-shot ESCs. There is no such thing as D-shot ESCs. Multi-shot and D-shot is the type of protocol used between the flight controller and ESC. So even if you did buy multi-shot ESCs, you can make them D-shot. All you have to do is remove the signal capacitor, and that is the only difference. And you also have to choose D-shot in Betaflight, which we did in the last video. So just a FYI, I am using D-shot on both of these multirotors, and I recommend and prefer D-shot because you do not have to calibrate those ESCs like you do multi-shot ESCs. So to update the firmware on the ESCs, we see that I have 16.4 here, and the newest version is going to be right here, 16.6. So if we click Flash BLHeli, it's automatically going to come up with the newest version of firmware, which, like I said, is 16.6. And if you are watching this video at a later date, then it's probably going to be something newer than that. And we want AL20 because AL20 is, well, for me, I want AL20. If you're using a different ESC, you will see something else, and that is normal. But because AL20 came on these ESCs, I want to keep it the same thing. So we see that it is the same thing. And I want it to say multi because there's 3 different ones. You got multi, main, tel, and then you can do all 3. But all we want is multi because these are multi-rotors, not airplanes or anything else. So what I'm going to do is click OK. Do I want to flash target ESC number 1 with this? Yes, I do. So click yes. You will then get a message like this, and you can just click OK. Then do the same thing 3 more times. Okay, once it's done, then click OK. We will come up with this box again, and we will now see that it has the newest version of firmware on all 4 ESCs. So just click OK. Now we can actually start setting up the ESCs. I mean, you can set this up any way you want. I'm just going to show you how I'm personally doing mine. You can do it different. I'm not saying you have to do this, but I leave the startup power at 0.50. Temperature protection, some ESCs have this, some ESCs don't. I just don't touch it. I leave it right where it's at. Same thing for low RPM protect. Motor direction, we will actually have to change the direction of 2 of these motors, but that's the last thing that I do. I leave dmacc compensation at low. For medium motor timing, I set this to medium high. You may have to play around with this. Some motors like different timing, but most guys, it's going to be either medium high or high, and I like medium high. Programming by TX, I always turn this off. Now, because we are using D-Shot protocol on these ESCs, the PPM min throttle and max throttle does not matter, because your flight controller and ESCs, they are completely ignoring both of these boxes. So you can literally set this to anything you want, and it's not going to matter because it's being ignored. But just to be sure, I always set this to 1000 and 2000. I leave brake on stop off. Beep strength, this is going to be the volume of the beeps whenever you plug in your battery. Beacon strength is going to be the volume of the beacon delay. So let me explain this one first. If you have your battery plugged in like I do right now, after 10 minutes the ESCs will start beeping. And like I said in the last video, I don't actually use beepers on my flight controller to help me find my multirotor if I ever do lose it in tall grass or a tree or anything. What I do instead is I personally like to set this to 2 minutes. So if I'm looking for it and I can't find it, after 2 minutes it will start beeping, and then I find it. And going back to beacon strength, this is going to be the volume of the beeps after your beacon delay, and I set this to 100 just to increase the volume a little bit. But you don't want to increase it too high because you could potentially damage the ESC. And that's going to be it. Now the only difference is going to be if you are using multi-shot protocol on your ESCs, you will have to calibrate these. But like I said, I would just recommend using D-Shot, and if you have multi-shot ESCs, they're also D-Shot ESCs. They're both exactly the same thing. So just watch my video in my BLHeli Suite playlist on how to locate your signal capacitor and remove it, and after you remove it, then you can use D-Shot, and that will keep you from having to calibrate your multi-shot ESCs. After we are done making all these setting changes, I will do right setup, and I got write OK for all 4 of these. Once again, if you have one ESC that does not write OK, then just try it again. You might have to try it a couple times. If you try it a bunch of times, then once again it's probably just a bad ESC or bad pin on your flight controller. Now for the motor direction, these ESCs right here, I mean, you can turn them off like this, You can turn them on individually, or you can right click, and right click will just select one. Before I change the motor direction for any motors, we need to see which direction they are all spinning. So if we click on the motors tab, remember to take the props off and then check I understand the risk propellers are removed, and then you can increase this and this will make your motor start spinning, or you can do all four with the master slider. Sometimes it's hard to actually see which direction the motors are spinning, so I just take a piece of wire like this, and motor number 1 is going to be this motor here, and then we have motor 2, motor 3, and motor 4. Motor number 1 is supposed to spin clockwise, so this way, and I can see from the piece of wire that it is spinning clockwise. So this means that all 4 of my motors should be spinning clockwise because I didn't crisscross any of the wires going into the ESC. I just wired them all straight in. So let's just verify real quick. So this is motor number 2, and that is spinning clockwise, which it should not be. 2 and 3 should be counterclockwise, so spinning this way. Motor 3 is spinning clockwise, and motor 4 is spinning clockwise. So my guess was correct, they are all spinning clockwise, but we need 2 and 3 spinning the other direction, counterclockwise. Let's go back to SI Labs ESC setup. Now we have to reconnect, and because of that I'm going to disconnect my battery, click connect, then plug the battery in, then read setup, and now we're connected. I will right click on motor number 2 and change motor direction from normal to reversed, and then click right setup and right OK. Then right click on motor number 3, reversed, right setup, right OK. Then if I turn all these back on, these went from green to orange, and what this means is there's a difference between these ESCs. Blue is the master, green means it's exactly the same as the master, it's just not the master, and that's why it's green. 2 and 3 is orange because there is something different between these ESCs and number 4 and 1. If you want to know the exact differences between the ESCs, then you can click ESC overview, and the highlighted blue boxes will show you what is different between the ESCs. And we see that the only difference between all 4 of these is I have 2 and 3 reversed. So let's go back to motors. I understand the risk, and recheck the direction. So now this one is spinning counterclockwise, and this one is also spinning counterclockwise. Our motors and ESCs are completely set up now. If you do have multi-shot ESCs, then you will have to click calibrate ESCs. I'm not going to do it because I'm using D-Shot, but just click calibrate ESCs and it will completely walk you through the steps. Or once again, look in my BL Heli Suite playlist, and I have a video showing you how to actually calibrate multi-shot ESCs. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. I did say that I was going to show you how to do the Martian 2 build, but it will literally be exactly the same. Every single thing I did to this one, I will do to this one. The only difference is the version of firmware on the ESCs are different, but that doesn't matter. The process is still exactly the same. So thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon.